to the front of the Oz, there's a headline, virus travel bans risk $6 billion hit to economy. Australian universities are unfortunately preparing for Scott Morrison to extend a travel ban from China as banks predict that the coronavirus could wipe $6 billion off Australia's GDP and result in a quarter of negative growth. Now, if we look at that particular story and then we go, of course, to the Advertiser, which I just preempted, had a story on the front. Let's back Chinatown's the headline. Traders urge customers not to desert them over coronavirus concerns. International students stranded in China amid the worldwide coronavirus virus has left Chinatown traders pleading for help to save the struggling city strip. Traders who are petitioning the City Council for rate relief say international students, many of whom cannot leave China because of the travel ban, are their primary source of income. And of course, you know, we alluded to this last week, guys. I mean, when you think about the impact, Caleb Bond, of this particular virus on Australia, both from a tourism perspective and an export perspective, the poor old restaurateurs, the traders themselves, would also be doing it very tough.
God, you feel so sorry for these poor buggers, because we were sitting here a few weeks ago when coronavirus was just sort of starting to emerge around the world, and we were saying, oh, you know, looks pretty bad and it looks like it'll have a few economic impacts, and we're here basically a month later. We're talking about, you know, $6 billion worth of damage to the economy just in Australia. You just think of what it's like in the US and much larger countries. And you have, on a localised level, places like Chinatown here in Adelaide, which are struggling immensely because their base of customers are still overseas. They're not allowed to come back to the country. It's not so much that people who live here are not choosing to go because they're xenophobic and they think Chinese people means they're going to get coronavirus. It's the fact that half of the country's foreign students, or Chinese students, are still currently holed up in China. They're not allowed to come over here. And for places like Chinatown, that is devastating. And I think it's really up to us to get out there and try and support these businesses through what is a really difficult time for them, because they didn't see this coming. I mean, none of us saw this coming. But the effect of this virus, both economic and in other ways, I mean, the way all those people who are still holed up on that cruise ship, it just goes on and on, the ways this virus has just totally blown us away and done things we never saw coming. It's nothing like anything I've ever seen before.
Ollie?
I'm just picking up on the coronavirus ship off Japan for a moment as well. I saw an interesting story late today on the New York Post that an Aussie couple have been able to get a drone onto the ship to deliver 2 bottles of Pinot Noir. So they're finding some way to be able to, you know, survive that coronavirus ingenuity. Ship there off Japan. That's right, it's Australian ingenuity. So well done to them. But on a serious note, we've seen examples here in WA as well. Very, very popular restaurant with crustaceans and beautiful lobster and crabs out of WA. Usually does about 500 visitors or covers for lunch. They're reporting under 100. And we've seen cruise ships as well. Speaking of cruise ships again, the Queen Mary 2 was meant to dock in Singapore. It's going to come here to Fremantle next week instead. And a couple of talkback callers to 6PR today who were on their way up to Asia next week for cruises said they've been told, I think it was by the Royal Caribbean line, if my memory serves me correctly, that those cruises have been cancelled. They got emails overnight to say don't bother flying into Singapore. They're just not going to be. They're not going to be departing. So the ramifications are enormous for the entire world and the entire tourism sector. And here at home, of course, you've got the double whammy between plenty of Chinese tourists cancelling their trips and other tourists from other countries as well saying, well, I'm not going to travel at the moment. I'd rather stay home for the fear that this virus might spread. Just because I'm flying to a foreign country, they might decide to cancel their holiday plans. And again, as I say, the double whammy is you've still got the worldwide attention on the result of the fires over summer, and a lot of the world still believing that Australia's closed or it's been burnt out, we can't come here. We're open for business. It's an awesome spot. We all know that, and hopefully we can ride out the economic repercussions, but it's not just isolated to one city or one state. We've all got to bandy together. It's going to be a pretty tough year, I imagine.